Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are very happy to present this information for you. And if you have any questions, we'll be delighted to answer them after the presentation. Our presentation is mostly focused on New York real estate. There are some differences between different states. So if you have any questions on other states, please do let us know. We do have lots of wonderful colleagues out of state in different states, and we'll be happy to refer you with your questions to them. We mostly work in New York and mostly know about real estate in New York, so we'll be talking about that. If it's different in your state, forgive us, it might be different. Maggie already introduced us, so I won't focus on our information and our company information. I'll just tell you that we do work with residential and commercial real estate, and we do help with renting and sell. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We are members of all of Real Estate Board of New York, and work mostly in New York, as I already told. We are not attorneys and we are not CPAs. We don't provide any legal opinions or tax information. We're just brokers, and we provide information about our experience and our clients' experience. And in this seminar, we will be talking about pros and cons of renting versus buying real estate in New York. And I wanted to start with rental first, and there are always pros and cons of both rental and purchase. So when we do rent, we have lots of flexibility. We can move more easily. We have minimal responsibility for repairs and defects of the apartment or the building. There might be problems with the building which are owners responsible for. And we can invest the down payment for the apartment in more profitable financial instruments. On the other hand, we don't have any stability on the price or the terms. Most of rental agreements are for 1 or at the very best 2 years. You can renew them, but there are no guarantee that the owner will do that. You don't have any control of the quality or style of the renovation and fixtures, and you have limited possibility to change or adjust unit, your layout, or anything you need to change based on your needs. The rental payment is an expense, and you don't contribute it to the equity, and you don't have any influence on the building management. You don't have any say in that. On the other, talking about purchase, on the good side, you have more or less stable monthly payments, especially if you have a fixed mortgage terms. You have more flexibility on your renovation, on your layout changes, on your appliances upgrade. You can add something, you can do whatever you want within your apartment. Part of your monthly payments are tax deductible, and portion of your monthly payments go towards your equity in the unit. So you're paying towards the cost of your unit. If something changes in your life, you can rent the unit out, and in best case scenario, you will cover all of the expenses, or at least part of them. Real estate in New York have appreciation, and that's, I'll show on the next slide that it's consistent and pretty much stable. And versus renting, you have more say on how the building is managed and run, and you can vote on different changes within the building. But if you have any problems, repairs of the unit is your responsibility as the owner, versus the tenant, when you can ask the owner to change or help or adjust or pay for the payment. You have risk of monthly payment increase, common charges increase, or assessments or tax abatement phase out. There are some risks, especially if the building has potential problems, or like elevator broke and you have to at towards tax towards
You'll be assessed to pay towards any major improvements in the building.
Right. And then you have a potential risk of changing rules in the building, especially in New York. We have a co-op building, and they can do the more strict rules in the building, and then you have the risk with that. You have longer financial commitments, and you have higher costs of moving. So the fees and taxes when you're selling or buying or changing the unit are higher for their owner than the tenant. So that was the slide I was talking about before. The New York real estate in general, the prices went up for the last 20 years. So you do have appreciation, even with the small crises in the middle. The general pictures, the prices go up. So you will have appreciation if you are buying real estate in New York. And actually, most of the states have appreciation, except for, I don't know, most of the states. Florida have appreciation.
If you look at real estate investment long term, and if there are temporary downturns, hopefully long term, your investment is growing.
Right. So talking about expenses, this is the slide on the rental expenses in general. The security deposit is usually 1 month, could be 2 months, depending on your financial situation. The brokerage commission in New York is usually 15% annual rent. Sometimes it's 1 month, sometimes it's no fee building, and you can find it without brokerage commission. Some out of city neighborhoods, the landlord pays commission, so it could be different. The tenant's liability insurance is usually about $200 to $250 a year. Building applications fee, if any, are usually lower than for the purchaser, but it could be anywhere from $200 to $1,500. You have your cost of movers, of course, and then you buy, sell furniture if you change the apartment to fit a new layout. Then when you purchase the apartment, you have the down payment you have to pay, and it's usually at least 20% and could be more for some co-ops. I saw up to 50 or even 75%, depending on the co-op, but in general, usually 20%. You have a mention tax of 1% if the purchase price is above $1 million. You don't pay brokerage commission when you buy in New York. It's covered by the seller. You have to have your attorney, and the attorney's fee is usually from $2,000 to $5,000 or something around that. The building application fee are usually higher, and it could be again from $700 to $1,500 or about that. It depends on the building. For condos, you have a title insurance, which is approximately 0.4% from the price plus 0.2% with the mortgage. And there is also a mortgage tax of 1.925% from the loan amount. There are some bank fees. There could be bank fees or not, depending on the bank.
Usually you're paying for your appraisal.
Appraisal, sometimes for the attorney of the bank, sometimes some other fees, not necessarily. And there is usually, you are recommended to have an owner's insurance. It's could be somewhere from $400 to $700 a year. There could be additional taxes when you're buying from the sponsor in New York. Now the market is softer and you can probably negotiate this, but in general, the sponsor or developer, they expect you to pay 1.825%. That's a transfer tax, approximately. Since I mentioned that the moving cost is higher if you buy and then sell, I just wanted to quickly talk about the sale expenses. So when you sell the property in New York, you pay brokerage commission, and it's usually 4 to 6%. You pay again for your attorney. You pay for a building application fee again, and then you pay this transfer tax. So the state tax is 0.4% from purchase price, and then city tax for New York City is 1% from purchase price if below 500 or 1.4 to 5% if above 500. And there might be, not necessarily, but there might be some bank fees for mortgage, for legal team, for appraisal. Sometimes you have to pay something to the bank, not necessarily, but just wanted to mention that. So since we spoke about the expenses, I just wanted to outline who do we pay these expenses to. When we pay rental, it goes 100% to the landlord. You can deduct it. You don't pay towards your property. It's just full price goes to the landlord. When you buy with a mortgage, the down payment goes towards the cost of your unit and you're building your equity. Then monthly payments, you're also paying off the principal, building the same equity, and interest to the bank. So, for example, let's take the simplest example: 1 million price. You pay 20%, 200,000, building the equity. Then your mortgage is 800,000, and let's say the rate is 4% for 30 years. Your monthly payments are 3,820. 58% of that goes to the equity of the unit and 42% to the bank, approximately. So again, 50% of monthly payments and 100% of your down payment goes towards the equity you're building in your unit. Some other advantages of home ownership: we lock in the price of real estate. We are paying for the apartment based on its price on our closing date. Will the market change in 10, 20, 30 years? Will the prices go up? We will be still paying the same price of the unit 10, 20, 30 years ago. We also fix the interest rate if we choose the 30-year fixed rate, or if we plan to own the apartment for less than 30 years, we fix the rate usually for the timeline. We plan to own the apartment for 7, 15 years, 10 years, but we usually have a plan and then we fix the rate for this timeline. I started to mention the tax deductions, and before the new tax code, it was really beneficial to own the apartment. It changed a little. There is a new tax code. So by previous law, taxpayers who itemize their taxes can deduct state and local property and real estate taxes and either state and local income or sale taxes. By new law, standard deductions will be increased to 12,000 for single and 24 for married filing jointly, but the sale deduction will be capped at 10,000, and the deduction limit ends up to 2025. So we'll see how it changes in 7 years. Also, by mortgage deduction changed. Previous law allow us to deduct interest payments on mortgage up to 1 million, and now it's up to 750,000 after December 31st, 2017. This was also this change also expires at 2025. So in 7 years it might change, but right now this is the new law. I tried to do a couple examples. I don't want to focus on the math too much, but I'll just briefly go through the examples, and if you have any detailed questions, we'll be happy to talk about your particular scenario for each particular unit. So let's say like one of the cheapest price point in Manhattan, Upper Manhattan, price 375,000. The maintenance is rather low for Manhattan, 649. This is a co-op, so the tax deductibility is 47%. And we calculated that the tax deductible amount will be 15,000 600 a year. So your saving monthly will be about 300 a month. Um, your monthly payments are 2,000 mortgage plus maintenance, but when you count your tax deductible, it goes to 1,767, and the rent for a similar unit should be about 1,900, 2,000. So even though the monthly payments are kind of 2,081, which is about the renting approximate similar apartment like in the same building, you can still save by deducting some expenses and building your appreciation and building your equity. So in this particular apartment, it's about the same to own or to rent the apartment, but you're saving by tax deductibility and you're building your equity. I have several examples. I don't want to go into too much details, but it's all about, if you look at the numbers, it not for all of the apartments, some maintenance fee are really high, and for some apartments, for some neighborhoods, it doesn't really make much sense to own the unit. Sometimes it's even cheaper to rent, but for some neighborhoods and for some buildings, it's about the same or cheaper to own the apartment than to rent a similar apartment in the same neighborhood or building, but then you can benefit from all the advantages of owning the apartment. I have several, I mean, you'll have this presentation, so you can look at this math more closely, more accurate. I did, even for fun, I did a very expensive unit for 24 million, just to have some fun. And even for that unit, your expenses of ownership monthly are about 100 a month, and the same apartment could be rented for 65,000. So it's still about the same, even for luxury properties in New York. And building your equity for luxury, I guess you get more appreciation, hopefully. Although with luxury market, it's not that straightforward. So I just wanted to talk a little bit. There is a term tipping point in real estate. And the tipping point is the point in time in which the benefits of owning a home exceed the benefits of renting that same home. That's the tipping point. And it's calculated with the count of cost of both owning a home and renting a home, and also considers the opportunity of investing the down payment, closing costs, security deposits in alternative assets like stocks and bonds, and then net of taxes. And for New York City, the tipping point is 4.9 years. And in Manhattan, including all the luxury real estate, including all the expensive apartments, is 7.4 years. So if you plan to live in the neighborhood, in the building, in the similar apartment, in the similar conditions for like 7 to 10 years, it's better for you to buy than to rent. If you plan to be there like for a year or two, or you know that you will expand, or you need a bigger unit or a better school zone or whatever else, and you think that this particular neighborhood building apartment layout won't work for you for that long, it might not be beneficial for you to purchase. It might be cheaper for you to rent. It's different for different neighborhoods. In Queens, it's just 3 years. In general, again, it's different for each apartment, and we can calculate it for each apartment for your particular scenario. In Bronx, it's 4.6 years. In Brooklyn, it's 4.4 years. In general, Staten Island is 4.1 years. So in general, if you plan to live in the city, in the building, in the neighborhood for 10 plus years, it's better to buy and lock the rate and lock the price. But if you plan to stay less than that, you might want to calculate for your particular scenario and see what's cheaper and what's not. There is no right and wrong, and each particular scenario might be different, and it's always better to know your options and to do the math and to see what's really um, cheaper or more expensive to do in your particular case. It's better to save for a down payment, of course. You have to have it to even consider purchasing. But each situation is different, and we'll be happy to discuss your case. So that's about it, and I will be happy um, to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Karina and Maria. Reminder, if you have a question, you can use the chat box or you can email info@savvyladies.org. And this first question we have for you is asking, are closing costs when you buy a home negotiable? Can I negotiate with a broker or lawyer? And if it's a condo, with the building?
You can never negotiate with the building. They're very strict on that. You can negotiate with your attorney, and most of the attorneys will talk about the cost of their service. You don't pay to the broker, but when you sell the unit, you can negotiate with the broker. Sometimes you can negotiate with the seller who pays what, especially as I mentioned, when there is a sponsor involved, the developer, and they expect you to pay the transfer tax, you can negotiate that. I don't see much negotiations on the mention tax, so I don't think it's negotiable. But the transfer tax, if the seller expects you to pay, you do negotiate it on today's market.
Okay, thank you. Another question is asking if you can explain points that were mentioned in the presentation.
The tipping point?
Points on a mortgage, I believe.
Sometimes the bank will quote you the rate that they suggest. For example, they, given all the information, will give you a rate of, let's say, 4%, but they would consider low in that rate if you buy it out, if you pay them to lower the rate. And usually that is paying a percentage of the mortgage to lower the rate. So that percentage is called a point. So they will ask you, pay us 1% of the total amount to buy the rate down, or 2% or 10%. It will be how many points you pay to buy the rate down to a certain amount.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, if I can't afford the 20% down payment, can I take a loan out for that? Or what are some other ways that people come up with that down payment?
Usually, the best way is to probably raise money from family, because banks want the down payment to be your own. They're really trying to make sure that down payment is not borrowed, because they're looking at the total amount of debt that you have in the moment of purchase, and that's how they qualify you. One of the wonderful way of borrowing, if you're working for and you have for a company, you have a 401k or IRA, you can borrow from yourself. You can borrow from your own 401k or IRA and pay yourself interest, and that is probably a safe way for a bank to borrow for your down payment.
And gift money from close family members are allowed by the bank. They will consider
Gifts are allowed from families. Yeah.
Okay. And another question is asking more about the new tax changes affecting things. Do they only apply to high net worth individuals?
So the tax changes will actually affect, will probably not affect high net worth individuals as much because they're less price sensitive. They also will not affect lower category of home buyers, because the fact that you could deduct mortgage up to $1 million as opposed to now 750 will only affect people who buy in the $1 million, $2 million, $3 million price range. It will not affect those who buy in the 700 price range, because they'll be able to deduct their mortgage in full. But the middle group the middle class will be affected the most.
Okay. All right, well, those are the questions we have. So I want to thank you, Karina and Maria, for this presentation. And I see some comments here that this was a really fun presentation with the examples. And thank you so much for sharing everything. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. We will be sending out Karina and Maria's contact information if you didn't have a chance to write it down. So thank you again so much.
Thank you very much for organizing that and having us. Thank you.
Bye-bye.